Today's episode is brought to you by Nomad, voted the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers in mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information. Welcome back to another episode of the Interlake Sports Now. I'm Josh Dugan, and we'll start this thing out with the fall sports update, and then we'll take a look at the Grizzlies and Bobcats football schedules for the rest of the season as we get ready for the home stretch of Big Sky football. Let's roll through a light fall sports update this week. We have a few fall sports already in the books this year. So we'll start this out with a little soccer action, then move into some prep football. Starting with cat dog soccer that took place last week between Columbia Falls and Whitefish, where the Whitefish boys soccer team knocked off defending state champion Wildcats 3-1 at Smith Fields to hand Columbia Falls their first loss of the season. Preston McPherson, Kyler Johnson, and Sam Dow scored for the Bulldogs, and River Wolford had the lone goal for the Cats. Columbia Falls finished the season 10-1-1 overall and 6-1 in league play. And next up is a trip back to the playoffs to defend their state title. Whitefish, meanwhile, locked up the Northwest A title with the win, and after a win versus Polson over the weekend, they finished the season 11-0 with 0 draws overall. So impressive year for the Whitefish Bulldogs and Columbia Falls, who likely are both two favorites in the Class A state title race. As for the Wildcats and Bulldogs girls, Columbia Falls took home the win in cat dog soccer for the first time since 2018. The loss was the first of the season for the Bulldogs, who took home the Northwest A title this season. The Wildcats are second in the conference. Whitefish struck first with an Isabella Cook goal, but late goals from Hope McAtee and Kenzie West put the Wildcats over the top to set up the cat dog soccer split. All right, next up is our local football action. Let's get to the prep football roundup, starting with our Kalispell schools, who met for the annual crosstown battle last weekend, with Glacier beating Flathead 42-6. Flathead struck first to take a 6-0 lead on a Braden Capsper touchdown, and things were close at halftime as the Pack led 14-6. But the Wolfpack used a big second half to run away from the Braves and secure crosstown bragging rights. Kobe Dorcas ran for 2 Glacier touchdowns in the second half and finished with 146 yards rushing overall. Glacier QB Jackson Presley had 3 touchdown passes on the day and finished with 206 passing yards. On to the Class A ranks, where Columbia Falls moved to 4-2 overall with a 41-0 win over Western A rival, Libby, Friday. Wildcats QB Cody Schweiker threw 3 touchdown passes and ran for another to lead the way. He connected with Mark Robinson, Jace Hill, and Alan Anderson on the scores. Robinson also had a 50-yard punt return for a touchdown, and Alan Anderson took back an 85-yard kick return to the house to start the second half. So overall, a complete team effort for the Columbia Falls Wildcats. Impressive day on special teams, and Schweiker was doing his thing as usual. So Whitefish, meanwhile, they're next up, rolled to a 62-14 win over Stevensville. In Western A football action, Carson Gulick, finished 19 of 28 passing for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns while returning a pick 6 on defense as well. Impressive day for Carson Gulick. Whitefish had 3 total defensive scores, with Mason Kelch returning a fumble and Jesse Eisenbarth returning an interception for a touchdown as well. Strong day for the Bulldogs on defense. Last up on this week's Prep Sports Roundup was a battle of undefeated Class B foes, where Eureka took the trip down south to take on defending state champion Florence Carlton Eagles, where the Eagles knocked off the Lions 35-14. Caden Pecora and Tristan Butts had the Lions touchdowns on the day. Mason Arlington led the way for the Eagles with 2 touchdown passes and another with his legs. So moving into a quick local headline, then we'll talk a little Cat Griz football. Montana State track star and Flathead Braves product Ben Perrin won Big Sky Cross Country Athlete of the Week. Congratulations to Perrin, the former Flathead Brave, on the accomplishment. Here's the press release from the Montana State Sports Communications team. Ben Perrin was named Big Sky Men's Cross Country Athlete of the Week. The redshirt junior from Kalispell, Montana, placed 11th individually at the prestigious Joe Peony Notre Dame Invitational last Friday in South Bend, Indiana, leading the Bobcats to a 9th place team finish in a stacked field of ranked opponents. The weekly honor marks the 2nd career nod for the 2-time All-Big Sky honoree and the first since his performance last year at the same Joe Peony meet on the same course where he took 20th. Alrighty, kudos to the former Flathead Brave Ben Perrin, whose name has popped up a few times on the show. Last spring it was popping up for his efforts running track and field this time on the cross-country ranks. Definitely keep an eye out for Perrin and his accolades down the stretch. Let's get into a look at the Griz and Bobcats' remaining schedules on the football field after a quick word from our friends at Nomad. All right, jumping right into the college football talk here in Montana. We're going to start with Montana State, who has an absolute dogfight of a schedule down the stretch. They play Cal Poly this weekend, October 14th, and after that, it gets tough for Brent Vigen's squad. They're going to really need to be prepared, and they're going to need touchdown Tommy Malott back because they go into Sac State to take on a top 5 team in the country, into Idaho to take on the Vandals, who are also a top 5 team in the country. Then they're back November 4th. They host Northern Arizona in Bozeman. Northern Arizona is a team to keep an eye out for. They've been really impressive this year. They upset the Griz. They almost beat Sacramento State, and now they just beat a ranked Weber State team. So that's not looking like as much of a cakewalk as it was before the season. Then Eastern Washington comes to town in Bozeman, November 11th, and they close things out with a November 18th trip to Missoula to take on the Grizzlies. So it's going to be tough for the Cats. I can only imagine down the stretch what we're going to see from the Bobcats. They're going to need to bring their A game every week after this Cal Poly matchup. Even the Eastern Washington, the NAU, maybe you say the Grizzlies aren't where they've been in years past. None of those games are easy games. And when you're doing it back-to-back weeks, pretty much 5 weeks in a row, it's a challenge. That Sac State game, it's on ESPN2. The Hornets, they're a real deal powerhouse the last few years in the Big Sky. Their quarterback, Caden Bennett, is a real playmaker, as good as anybody in the conference when it comes to being a dual threat quarterback. He's the real deal. I think the Bobcats win that game, but there's a chance it's going to be a real nail biter. Then they follow that up with an even tougher test, playing Idaho on the road. If you can go 2-0 versus Sac State and Idaho, it sends a message to the entire FCS, because going on the road and winning back-to-back games versus top 5 teams, top 10 teams, that's almost unheard of in college football. You got to be a special program, and Montana State's trying to prove that that's exactly what they are at the FCS level. As of today, I do think Montana State can beat Idaho, but they need touchdown Tommy Malott back in action. And if he doesn't play, the Vandals do have the offensive firepower to put some pressure on the Bobcats and make them play from behind, take them out of their comfort zone, because Montana State, for the most part, has been playing with the lead, especially in the second half most of the season. So I think that's going to be something to really keep an eye on in that game. How do the Bobcats start? We'll definitely be talking more about that game when the time comes. Like I said, after that, they have 2 home games they should win, NAU and Eastern Washington. But those are both games that are tough, challenging, versus teams receiving votes for the top 25 in the country or in the top 25. Eastern Washington's been in and out of the poll this year. NAU's on the brink. So those are not cakewalk type of games. And of course, they finished the year versus the Grizzlies. That's one of those games you throw the records out, throw the rankings out. Doesn't matter. Last year, the Griz got embarrassed with College Game Day in town, ESPN in town. The Griz are going to pull out every trick in the book and try to really scrap back and pull off a Brawl of the Wild win in that one and get bragging rights back at home. So no easy games left for the Bobcats after this week versus Cal Poly. We'll see what happens down the stretch, but I'm excited for the test that Montana State faces as a college football fan, as a fan of the Big Sky. It's exciting to see the level of play the Bobcats have been playing at, and if they can pull off an undefeated stretch in Big Sky play with this schedule, it is extremely impressive, and the accolades, there's not enough that you can send their way. So if they manage to go undefeated in the Big Sky this year, it's a major accomplishment and going to give them some real momentum heading into the postseason, because that is a tough schedule. On to the Griz. October 14th, this Saturday, they take on Idaho in the Little Brown Stein game on ESPN2. Then they have a bye. Then Northern Colorado will come to town. Sac State comes to town. Then at Portland State, November 11th for the Griz, and they close things out with the Bobcats in town in Missoula at Washington Grizzly Stadium. The Grizzlies are currently 2-1 in conference play, 5-1 overall, heading into their Week 7 matchup with the Idaho Vandals. It's on ESPN2. That's going to be a big game to watch. Last year, the Grizzlies lost that game by a touchdown. Idaho was on the rise. Now it feels like Idaho's a full-blown power player in the FCS, but it's possible Montana steals one in Moscow. It is very possible. It's going to be a real challenge. What the Grizzlies need to do is come out early and really punch the Vandals in the mouth, because if the Vandals get a lead in that game, it could be over quick for Montana. They do not want to play from behind against one of the most explosive offenses in the country, so they really need to not beat themselves in that one. Can't do the costly turnovers. Can't do the bad penalties that we saw in the win versus UC Davis because the Vandals are good enough that they won't let you make those mistakes. So the Grizzlies aren't going to be able to make those mistakes if they want to win that game. That's going to be a big one for the Griz. And, of course, later this season, that Montana State game's huge. But Portland State, Northern Colorado, those are games the Griz, I don't want to say you should win, but they're very winnable games. Sac State last year, the Grizzlies played them really tough, and they had the game in the bag, but Sac State pulled off a 31-24 overtime win. Bit of a comeback effort that came down to a very questionable call that Griz Nation's still not too happy about. So it's possible the Griz compete with Sac State as well. It's in Missoula. That's going to help their cause. So the big games to circle on the calendar. Sac State in town, the Bobcats in town, and Montana this weekend playing in Idaho. So those are going to be 3 games that really define the Grizzlies season. You pull off wins in 2 of those games even. That would be a message to the entire country. So I'm excited to see what happens. The biggest thing for the Griz down the stretch is keep finding your groove on offense and just don't commit those costly turnovers and penalties, and they're going to have a chance to compete because their defense is, once again, really special. The offense is finally catching up. So the potential's there for the Griz. Interested to see how they play down the stretch. Last piece of Griz football news worth mentioning, Griz wide receiver Aaron Fonts was named Big Sky Offensive Player of the Week last week for his performance in the Grizzlies' win over UC Davis. He hauled in 5 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those was a highlight reel type of grab, that Sports Center top 10 kind of a play where he just goes out and makes an absolute crazy play on the ball. So Griz Nation, got to love seeing that offense start to click. Fonts, Junior Bergen, Keelan White, all emerging as playmakers on the outside. And it looks like the Griz passing game is finding a groove with Clifton McDowell hitting midseason form right on cue. So that'll do it for this week's Sports Now. Really looking forward to the Griz. They get that opportunity to play on national TV Saturday versus Idaho. Like I said, it's a late game, 8:30 p.m. kickoff. You can expect a wild game. Those college football games late at night always seem to get a little interesting. Get back next week, talk a little more local sports action, check back in on the Griz after their nationally televised game, and talk a little Bobcats as they prepare. They take on Cal Poly this weekend, and then they have an absolute grinder of a schedule the rest of the way. So we'll be breaking that down a little bit more next week. Thank you as always for watching, y'all. I'm Josh Dugan, and I'm out. Today's episode is brought to you by Nomad. Go to the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers and mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information.